Hello, and welcome to the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Tracy Harris.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
We're so glad you could join us today. Oh, screw all that. We're live like normal. Today is Sunday, August 17th, 2008. Thanks to everybody who's joining and watching us live.
I think what I'm going to start doing is maybe pointing out that when someone says to me that people take science at face value as authoritarian, dictates of truth, I'm going to challenge them to show me someone doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that it never happens, but it certainly doesn't happen to the degree that it's dialogued about.
But even those people that do, even when they come up with examples, okay, those people are wrong. You don't,
Right.
I mean,
Right, but that's what I'm saying.
They may have the correct answer for the wrong reasons. That's
Right.
entirely possible.
And that's part of my point, is that, does the number of people who make this error merit the amount of dialogue that it gets and the chastisement that is laid down for it? And I don't believe that it does.
Well, I think there's a significant chunk of the population that would just accept basically scientific pronouncements. But I think there's a completely different reason for this. As a matter of practicality, we could not individually go and investigate and come to a complete understanding